All right, section 6.5, using the percent proportion, right? If you remember back to section 6.2 when we introduced proportion, right, or equal ratios, we use cross multiplication to solve. All right, so we're going to use the percent proportion to solve these problems. Now, there are times where you don't really need to use this proportion to do it. I mean, you're going to be able to look at the problem and figure out what it is. But there's other times where this comes in very handy. So um, the percent proportion compares a part of something to the whole or to the base or of some number. So if you look at this percent proportion, the 100 represents the total percentage, right? The 100%. So that never changes. These other three parts change depending on the problem, right? And we can only solve for one missing value at a time. So it'll give us two of these three, and we got to find the missing one. All right. So you have part of a number divided by the base or the whole, and that's going to equal the same percentage out of 100, right? So, for example, we should know that if I have 3 out of 4, what percent of that out of 100, right? And we should know that that's 75% out of 100. If I type in my calculator, this is 0.75. If I type in my calculator, this is 0.75. And remember, the other way to check that is something's proportional is do our cross products. 3 times 100 is 300. 4 times 75 is also 300. So these are proportionate. All right, they're not going to be all that easy, but we want to look for keywords. Is refers to the part, of tells us what the base is. Like I said, 100 doesn't change, and then whatever percent they give you, that goes in the percent side. So let's look at some examples, right? So I'm going to write this up here. So is of percent out of 100. So let's look here. It says 5 is, right? 5 is what percent, right? So that's going to be my variable. I'll just use x. 5 is what percent of 8, right? So of is 8, is 5. There's my variable. There's 100. Now, like I said, this is just another tool, right? But you should remember from section 6.4, I can turn 5/8 into a percentage, right? Which means I can do 5 divided by 8 in my calculator. And when I do that, it tells me 0.625, right? And then we said in section 6.4, well, to turn that into a percent, I move it 2 to the right or I times it by 100, and that would give me 62.5%. Okay, now back that up, right? So we also learned in section 6.2 that we solve proportions using cross multiplication. So I always like to do my variable first, right? So that will give me 8x equals my other product here. 5 times 100 is 500. Divide both sides by 8, and we get x equals 62.5%, right? So another way to do that. So here it says what percent of 4, okay, so of is 4, is 7, right? And we're looking for the percentage out of 100, okay? So if we cross multiply, right, 4 times x equals 7 times 100, which would be 700. So I'm going to divide both sides by 4. And we get 175%, right? And that should make sense because if I were to take that and turn it into a mixed number, right, it'd be 1 3/4, right, which is 1.75, which is 175%. Okay, pause the video here and see if you can solve number 3. All right, you should have gotten 120%. Now, using that in a word problem, okay, it says if there are 443 threatened species in the world and 37 of them are mammals, what percentage of the total number of species of threatened species are mammals, right? So we have 37 out of 443, right? And again, you can just use what we learned in 6.4, or you can use the percent proportion, right, where we're looking for this percentage out of 100, right? So if we were to do that cross multiplication, we end up with 8 point, it says 35, so we're going to round that to 8.4%, right? 8.4%. Okay, and remember the two ways you could do it. You could do cross multiply. 443x equals 3,700, right? Divide that by 443. And that's where we get it says 8.35, but we round it to 8.4%. Or, right, I could do, since I know this side is 37 divided by 443, my calculator tells me 0.0835, right? Times that by 100 to turn it to a percent. So that'd be 8 point, and then this rounds it up to 4. Okay. Now, so when you're looking for percentage, you can use this way we used in 6.4 or this percent proportion. But finding the part, you can see it might be beneficial for you to use the proportion. So remember, we have is of percent out of 100. Okay, so it says what number is, okay, so that's what we're looking for. 5.5, oh, man, I was getting so good at that too. 5.5 is the percentage out of 100, and of 650. Right, so of 650. So cross multiplying, right, I like to do my variable first, so I'm going to pair that up. So that would be 100x, and then I'm going to multiply 650 times 5.5 to give me the other cross product, and that gives me 3575. Divide that by 100, and we end up with 35.75. Okay, and that is what number? So that is a number, right? If it asked me to round to the nearest tenth, that'd be 35.8. All right, take a second and see if you can set up this proportion. Remember, the 100 is always in that spot. It says, what is 80% of 130? So 80%, that should be an easy one. That's a percentage that goes here. The of is 130. I'm looking for the is, right, the part. So just going into this problem, I should know I'm looking for 80% of something, okay, which means that this has to be less than the whole, right? It has to be less than 130. That should just give you a little bit of help going into the problem. Okay, so take a minute and do your cross multiplication and see what is that number that's missing. Should get 104, right? And then the good thing is you can always check this out, right? Meaning I could plug in 104, right? As long as I'm not rounding, right? Got to be careful I'm rounding, but I didn't round that at all. It was just 104. If I do 104 divided by 130 in my calculator, it tells me 0.8, right? Which I should recognize as 80%. Or if I did 80 divided by 100, my calculator will also tell me 0.8. All right. So take a minute. Right, 100 never changes. See if you can solve number 3, right? Fill in the proportion and then solve it for the missing. All right, so 25 goes in the percent spot. The of is 250, right? Do a cross multiplying, however you want to do that there. You should get 62.5, right? Another way to look at this one, you know that 25%, or we should know that 25% is a quarter of something, right? It's 1/4. So if I took 250 and divided it by 4, I get 62.5. So that should make sense as your answer. All right, now finding the base, right? So this is of percent out of 100. Right, so 100 never changes, right? It's always out of 100. That's what percent is. This is going to be 40 out of the 100. Now here it says 52 is 40% of what number, right? And you can call that whatever you want there. I always like to use X. Okay, so if I'm doing cross multiplying, okay, I have just personal preference. I like to put the variable first, so it's on the left side. 52 times 100. And then if I divide both sides by 40, we get 130 as our base, right? If we just think about that, does that make sense? It's less than half, right? 40% is less than half. If you want to check, you can do 52 divided by 130 in your calculator, and it tells you 0.4, which is the same as 40%. All right, see if you can solve 2 and 3. All right, see how you did here, right? Number 2, 21 is the is. We're looking for of, and we're looking for 30%. So cross multiply, we get 70. And then in number 3, right, 8 is 95% of, right? So there's my variable. Cross multiply, we should get 8.4. All right, I'd like you to try the following problem starting on page 291. All right, doing 9 through 16, 21, 22, 29, and 30, and then 33 to 35. Hope you all have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.